The Zoldyck family captured the attention of many readers of the Hunter x Hunter manga for various reasons: their strength, their designs, their importance in the story. But, in addition to all that, another aspect that I find very striking and tremendously rich, is the internal interaction between the members of this peculiar family, their way of relating, both socially and emotionally, and is that, this group hardly meets what we generally consider as a family. In fact, their way of relating is more like an interaction between politicians from different parties, with contrasting ideologies and objectives that sometimes will have to form alliances and other times will have to confront each other. So in this video, we will talk about each of the members of the Zoldyck family, their role in this world-renowned organization they created and how they connect with the rest of the members. When we talk about the functionality of the family, as an institution, there are small clues that indicate that this family is deeply interconnected with the rest of the world, with other institutions and with the underworld. For example, we saw that among the butlers of the family there are citizens from Meteor City. We know how delicate is the relationship of this city with the rest of the world, so its connection with the Zoldyck is interesting. Also, even more interesting, is that Killua's mother is originally from that city, so, in extension, all her children could perhaps be considered as part of that nation, depending on how the leaders of Meteor City handle this issue. This, in turn, fits with the fact that several members of the Zoldyck family have joined forces with the Raiden on more than one occasion, and Killua they wanted to recruit. This fits since having a mother from that city, it will be easy for them to connect and understand other similar individuals. Family members don't just kill chaotically in order to get paid and avoid trouble. We have seen that the Zoldicks have a system of techniques, philosophies and traditions that are passed down from generation to generation. For example, the fact that they decide to leave the gates open on their grounds and that whoever is strong enough to cross the gates and to escape or defeat the guardian beasts can technically enter as far as possible. In other words, the Zoldyck give enormous importance to being strong or die, to meet the requirements to remain the most important group of assassins in the world, and each member must be aware of and meet these requirements. The organization they created, in some ways goes beyond the simple business of killing for money, and becomes something political, or perhaps it would be better to call it something similar to royalty. We can see that the country where they live accepts the profession of killing as something legal. We do not know how they got there, but depending on how old the Zoldyck family is, perhaps they themselves influence the government of that country to allow their profession. There are even tourist tours outside their grounds as part of the cultural richness of the country. Another example that connects with this, is that Illumi has the most important pass possible aboard the ship to the Dark Continent. This is something remarkable since it was explained that it is not only a matter of having a lot of money to be able to get a pass like this, there must be a degree of importance linked to politics or royalty of some country to be part of this distinguished group. That is, if Illumi wanted to, he could be attending parties where the princes of Kakin, the king who organized this trip, and all kinds of politicians of the highest rank are present. The Zoldyck's connections are wide and deep, ranging from allying with the best hunters, to being hired by international mafia leaders, as well as, at times, making alliances with the Raiden or Hisoka. At the same time, they have no problem entering into conflict with these types of organizations, despite the giants they could bring upon them. For example, we were told that Silva murdered a member of the Raiden, Illumi killed the mafia dons and made enemies of politically important hunters during the arc of the president's election when they ordered Illumi to be hunted down. All of this speaks to the powerful institution that the Zoldicks are in the world. Another moment that helps us understand the politics of this family is when Gon and his group try to visit their friend Killua. The process for them to get in was practically bureaucratic, full of official procedures, tests, rules, stipulated punishments and officials in charge of every step. In turn, the group of butlers is almost a police force or a secret service similar to that of the United States in the care of political or royal figures. This group is complex in its own right. There are also factions among these characters, and we clearly see that some prefer Silva and Zeno's methods, while others are loyal to Illumi and her mother. Killua's charisma and talent has also earned the respect and even affection of some butlers, so in this respect Killua creates a third faction. The family shows a strong traditional thinking of blood and successions, attached to what would be a dynasty. That is, at no time is anyone outside the Zoldyck blood considered an official member. There are other ideological groups in this story, such as the Raiden, that can let in more members or even change leaders if Krillot decides to give his life in exchange for the group, but the Zoldyck this is never an option. The foundations of the groups are different. Only members of Zoldyck blood can be part of the main group, and the successor must necessarily be one of the sons. We saw that there are restrictions that the leader of the family can activate to limit what the other members do. Killua, despite being someone very independent and who wants to break free from his family, shows great respect and concern for these restrictions when his father puts one after taking Aluka. In other words, These are not just orders between parents and children that at the end of the day many young people will break. In this case they are strict and dangerous threats from the leader of the family towards the other members. The interaction between family members is almost always in the form of agreements, exchanges and pressures. For example, when Maluki needed money he offered his father to do a certain amount of work as long as his father would lend him money. In this family it is rare to see classic father-son exchanges, where one does not necessarily have to take advantage of the other. We also see it between Killua and Maluki. Although they do not have a good personal relationship, they can perfectly well talk to each other to make deals, pressure each other to something or directly threaten each other, not with physical violence but with some political tactic. Among the characteristics that show this family as an ancient and enduring institution, for example, we see that they use animals to complement their work. The world of Hunter x Hunter already has technology similar to the one shown, but the family has not given up some of the ancient tools that in some ways can surpass modern technology. Maluki uses an eagle to send messages to Killua. The family's grounds are protected by wild beasts that make even Gon fearful. This kind of teamwork with animals, in my opinion, also helps to understand that this family has been doing this work for many generations. Killua's mother, named Kikyo, is a woman completely out of the ordinary. Let's remember that this character is originally from Meteor City, and it seems to me that this has to do with her personality and priorities in her life. As we have already seen from other characters in Meteor City, they have a strong resentment against the world. Besides, they are used to a life of poverty, disease, abuse and injustice. These humans are more accustomed to things like death and evil than most of us can understand, and therefore have an easy time participating in activities that we consider reprehensible. Many of them simply do not fit into what average humans consider civilization. Kikyo shows just that, a vast difference in values and behavior. She has no problem with her family, including her young children, training and participating in the work of professional assassins. Kikyo shows pride and happiness when her children, especially Killua, excel in aspects of coldness, talent for killing and evil. There is a specific scene in which Silva, Kikyo's husband, shuts her up and insults her because he considers the things she is saying stupid. Although this is obviously rude behavior, one must keep in mind that the way these characters relate and think is completely different from the average human. I honestly don't think Kikyo would be bothered by Silva talking to her like that. Another example is when Killua attacked her mother in order to escape from the mansion. Illumi mentioned that her mother fell into a deep cry, but not because of sadness or pain, but because of the pride she felt when she saw Killua's determination and coldness. Kikyo has proven to be very impulsive and irritable, but, curiously, she also has an immense love for her family. The detail is that her way of expressing that love is with extreme manipulations. It is an alarmingly possessive love that suffocates Killua, and, since her preference for Killua as the next heir to the family business is so obvious, it seems to me that the other children have also formed their personalities and goals around this obsession with Killua. We have seen that members of the Zoldyck can form alliances with extreme ease with criminals like the Gene Raiden. When you consider that the mother of this family is originally from the same town as the original Raiden, it makes perfect sense that Kalido and Illumi would feel right at home working with these bandits. Kalido is so far one of the most enigmatic members of the family. We know very little about him, but it seems that his goal is to bring Killua back to the family. This may be because Kalido is strongly influenced by his mother and she passed on this obsession with having Killua at the helm of the family. The first few times we saw Kalido, he always stood by his mother's side, and faithfully obeyed her orders. This could mean that Kalido is part of the Zoldyck faction where Kikyo and Illumi seem to be the decision makers. However, Kalido showed an interesting aspect, and that is that, unlike his other family members, who prefer to work alone or within the Zoldyck family boundaries, Kalido decided to join the Raiden. We don't know exactly how joining the Raiden is related to bringing Killua home, but perhaps it is a form of training, of becoming stronger, just as Killua was sent to the battle tower to train. Perhaps Kalido is using the Raiden to gain experience and strength and thus have a chance to convince or force Killua to return. When the Raiden attacked the Chimera ants, we saw Kalido constantly measuring his power with that of his companions present. He was studying them carefully. That's why I think his joining this group has to do with learning from them. Also, in the most recent mission involving killing Hisoka, Kalido and Illumi made their own team within the Raiden, again, giving us to understand that Kalido belongs to Illumi's faction and has no problem working with him following his orders. In the case of Maluki, this also seems to be within Kikyo and Illumi's faction. We have seen that he has disagreements with Silva and Zeno's faction, and with the freedom they give Killua to act as he prefers. His views on the future of the family fit much more with his mother's. That is, with direct manipulation. It was revealed that his Nen type is also manipulation. Although we haven't seen him use Nen directly, he does seem to have knowledge of these abilities, as he could feel and observe Aluka's burst of power when he healed Gon. This character has a facility to be unpleasant, being someone is all the time locked up playing video games, eating excessively and exerting himself as little as possible. In a world of hunters and professional killers, Maluki does not cause much admiration. However, I find it interesting how he has managed to become part of the family by creating his own style of murder, using technology and information. Maluki gives a new internalized twist to the whole family, giving them access to technology that otherwise they probably wouldn't use, since almost everyone else prefers to use combat methods. For example, when they hacked Subone's monocle to spy on Killua's actions. His relationship with Killua is embedded with a lot of resentment, yet Maluki is able to recognize his brother's extraordinary talent and do business with him if it will be beneficial to him. We also saw flashes of formidable conviction, though he generally comes across as lazy. His little adventure trying to get the Greed Island video game at all costs was an example of Maluki's determination. Maluki is childish in many ways and, as the Zoldyck is brought up, complies with having an emotional void in the face of the death of others. For example, seeing how she used Aluka's wishes to get a new computer regardless of the danger of her selfishness. Maha's case is brief but still interesting. We know almost nothing about him, but in the chart Togashi made showing the family's relationship with Killua, we could see that Maha was basically untouchable. This is useful to further understand that this family is run by ranks, factions and by politics. Maha seems to be semi-retired from the family's control and seems to only participate in missions where he will be absolutely necessary, such as assassinating mafia leaders. The case of Zoldyck is similar to Maha's. We know practically nothing about him, but his trip to the Dark Continent gives us an example that Killua was not the first member of the family to make friends with hunters, in this case with Netero, and to directly accept jobs that are more of a hunter than an assassin. Perhaps we will learn more about him and how he became friends with Netero later in the story. Zeno is a relaxed, intelligent and patient man. We saw him have a secondary role in the family, where before he was the leader, now he allows Silva to continue the work. This fact already speaks about Zeno's maturity and wisdom. The common and simple thing would be that he would show resistance to leave the leader's position, especially when he is still extremely strong, perhaps stronger than Silva himself, and has also shown intelligence and reasoning above his son. But just like the others, Zeno seems to have tremendous respect for the family tradition, the business, his methodology and his place in the world. On the internal factions in the family, Zeno definitely stands with his son Silva, creating their own faction between them. They have similar methodologies. For example, both are quite patient with Killua and decide to give him more freedom instead of the direct manipulation of Illumi's faction and his Kikyo. Zeno's loyalty to the family is so formidable, he was willing to die in his fight against Krollo for the sake of accomplishing the mission. His intelligence was recognized by other geniuses such as Krollo, when he excellently deduced Krollo's abilities and intentions. His power is also recognized by people of enormous political and martial stature. For example, Netero against Zeno to carry out a mission so dangerous that Netero himself knew he could end up dead, and that is why he was prepared with the bomb inside his body. That Zeno was chosen for this mission by the most legendary hunter of the time is reason enough to recognize his power. Moreover, in this action we can also see a bit of how Zeno saw his relationships with other institutions and people, such as the hunters. Zeno was an old acquaintance of Netero and it could be said that they had a friendship, despite the age difference. This flexibility to interact with the hunters is similar to how Killua ended up allying with Gon. Perhaps that is why he is more permissive with his grandson. This character is honest and self-assured. He has no problem recognizing when other people are inferior to him and will just be a strobe, like the other assassins they hired to kill the Raiden, but he is also perfectly capable of recognizing when he is inferior to someone. For example, when he talked about Netero's enormous strength or when he acknowledged that witnessing Mira made him feel useless and outclassed in every way. Zeno is a professional at killing, however, he himself clarified that he does not take any kind of pleasure in killing. He is no stranger to the suffering of others, and does not seek to harm without reason. His loyalty and understanding of the Zoldyck family's need make him at peace with being a professional assassin, but he showed remarkable remorse for having seriously harmed Komugi during the palace invasion. In fact, his surprise at this mistake was so great, that he showed some anger against the hunters since he was not informed that there were innocent humans in the palace. When Cheetah wanted to fight him, Zeno was clearly disturbed by the accident and had no problem even talking about his sadness over what happened. This character is definitely more emotional and more sensitive than most of the other family members. About Illumi, I already have an analysis of this character, and as for his relationship with the factions, as I said, he has a separate faction from the Silva and Zeno. It seems to me that he shares faction along with his mother but with quite a bit of leadership within his faction. Illumi has been shown to carry out actions directly contrary to his father's wishes, such as chasing Killua and attacking him constantly during the arc of the election of the new president. He does not seem to have a bad relationship with his father or grandfather, but there is some perceived independence from their orders or philosophies. Interestingly, although Illumi is quite dangerous and uncontrollable, he has also shown a deep respect for the Zoldyck family as an institution, chooses to be part of their traditions, and is very interested in the best Zoldyck being the leader, i.e. Killua, even if that means he is not the leader. Illumi would love to be able to manipulate Killua from the shadows, but we also saw that he is willing to die as long as Killua survives and takes over the family business in the future. In the case of Silva, this character is serious, cold and focused. He does not show much enthusiasm for projects outside of his work as the leader of the Zoldyck family. The little we have seen of him outside of being an assassin, is his interest in collecting special knives. Silva also shows a formidable respect and seriousness when it comes to carrying out his assassination missions. This character was willing to kill his own father in order to accomplish the mission of ending Krillow's life. As Silva himself told Killua, he was not raised in terms of emotions or affection, but in terms of being as efficient as possible in his work, although it is to be respected that he makes the effort to understand Killua with his emotional complexity and not just force him to be a cold machine. Another moment in which we see the brutality and coldness of which he is capable, was when he crushed Cheetu without giving him any time to defend himself or speak. Honoring all those lessons, we see Killua mention that a professional killer should not see his job as a fair and honorable fight, but finish it as quickly as possible and with as little damage as possible. Silva also shows a huge interest in Killua, however, he expresses it indirectly, more freely, and putting his trust that Killua, being his son, will sooner or later want to live the Zoldyck traditions and lead the family. It is worth noting the wisdom that Silva has in relation to understanding that Killua is an independent person and that it will not be possible to force him to be an assassin. If they want him to be one, it will have to be by other means. Silva, with all his mechanical coldness of an assassin, is also capable of sitting down and talking to his son, asking him what he wants and reaching agreements about his future. But if there is any way we can get to know Silva, it is through Killua. Killua many times mentions his father or gives us hints of information about this enigmatic character. For example, Killua shows admiration for his father's talent when it comes to performing assassination techniques that go beyond what Killua can achieve in those moments, such as the technique to extract the heart of his opponents. He also shows confidence and respect for his father's opinion by recalling his warning about not taking jobs to kill Raiden members, as the payoff is not worth the effort. When Killua goes to rescue Iluka, he meets his father, and although the young man is determined to save his sister, he shows respect for his father by talking to him and answering the questions he had. It is unconfirmed that Silva was aware of the needle that Illumi put in Killua to control and protect him, so, when he had his conversation with Killua where he made him promise not to betray his friends, this, in my opinion, was direct allusion to Silva knowing that Killua was being forced to run and betray in order to stay alive, and Silva wanted Killua to be stronger than that needle, to reach the mental strength to overcome it, as that would make him stronger and a better leader of the family. Killua is basically the center of the family in the present. Discord and plans revolve around him. Ironically, being so pressured by this political system, now all he wants is to be free of it. Still, it seems to me that Killua takes an important step during the arc of the election of the president. Here we finally saw Killua declare to his family that he would do things his way, that he would take Iluka with him, and that he would not allow them to be manipulated any longer. In other words, in a way Killua entered the family dynamic again, but this time creating his own faction, along with Iluka, where he is able to confront Illumi, disobey his father, and make butlers who are on his side betray or deceive other butlers who favor a different faction. In a way, Silva was right that Killua would return sooner or later. In the future, I would bet Killua will still have encounters or exchanges with the family, but now it will be as a leader of his own faction with more authority and without being a puppet of Illumi's faction. Killua's out-of-the-box talent is especially problematic for the family, as, at the same time, it gives them a formidable potential leader to take the family to new levels of international power, but it also creates all sorts of clashes between the factions as to how to control him. Killua can even break some rules or traditions thanks to this huge interest his parents have in him. Obviously, creating friction between his siblings, whether it is a desire to control him, resentment, or love. Iluka was labeled as something outside the family dynamic. The problem with this was not only that it was obviously cruel. Killua's main concern with this order was that Iluka was left out of all the benefits and protections of being a Zoldyck. She had no say in internal matters, she was not protected from being killed by another Zoldyck, she could not have her faction or freely choose one, she would only be a tool for someone else's use. This condition would be even worse than Killua's, who although he was also subjected to strong manipulations, at the end of the day he enjoyed all the benefits of being a member, he even enjoyed some special treatment for being so talented, but Aluka would be manipulated and exploited without having the right to the slightest benefit. What do you think of these characters? Leave me your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching this video.